And joining us now is Ambassador William Taylor. He was a former ambassador of the United States of America to Ukraine. He's joining me from DC. Thank you so much, Ambassador Taylor, for joining me. Welcome back. The conversations have moved from the Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff meeting in Moscow to a Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner meeting in Berlin, and this time with Zelenskyy. What are you expecting?
I'm expecting that the Ukrainians and Americans with the Europeans, and it's important that they are meeting in Berlin with European leaders as well. I'm expecting that the three-way conversations will lead to an agreement among those three, the Europeans, Ukrainians, and Americans, on how to end this war. And then the Americans will take that proposal, that agreement, to the Russians, and we'll see what they say. Up until now, the Russians have said no to every proposal. We'll see what they do this time.
But this time there is a change. There is a climb down when it comes to Ukraine's demand for NATO's membership. He's saying that that certainly is not important anymore, provided there are security guarantees. Can there be enough security guarantees if America is not part of that guarantee, Ambassador Taylor?
No, the United States will have to be part of that guarantee. And I think the Ukrainians have made that very clear. The Ukrainians have also said they're willing to withdraw their request for membership of NATO for the time being, for now. It doesn't preclude them from applying again sometime in the future. But if they're not going to have the NATO guarantee, they need another guarantee with the Americans, with the Europeans. And the Europeans have been putting together a coalition of the willing that is not NATO. It's actually broader than NATO. And that will provide the guarantee that the Ukrainians are looking for with U.S. support.
Well, Ambassador Taylor, in all this, we're also seeing a lot of mobilization within Europe. It does seem like the post-Cold War era of absolute security guarantee from America has crumbled, and Europe now thinks it needs to fend for itself.
The Europeans do recognize they're going to have to fend for themselves sooner or later. NATO is not crumbling. NATO is still very much alive and very much a deterrent to the Russians. As you have reported, the Russians have not invaded, attacked any NATO nation. They've attacked two non-NATO nations, which is why the Ukrainians and the Georgians earlier wanted to become members of NATO. NATO still exists to protect the current members. However, the Russians don't accept that. The Russians would like to maintain the capability and the possibility of continuing to fight. So this is what the Europeans, Ukrainians, and Americans are designing, a force, a coalition of the willing, less than the NATO, but broader than NATO, to defend against a Russian aggression.
Right, Ambassador Taylor, the fact that there was a marathon meeting in Moscow, 5 hours between the envoys and President Putin, and now we see a 5-hour meeting that took place with President Zelenskyy. This is day 2. We'll have to wait and see what really that brings about. I hope you'll be joining me further on as well for the coming days when we see more developments on the ground on the Russia-Ukraine war. Thank you so much for joining me for now.
Thank you, Geeta. Good to be here.